Okay, well, what's going on, everybody? And welcome to Secrets of Role Mangging for our Call of Cthulhu campaign. Now, this series is going to be kind of a side series to our regular role mangging videos, and this series is going to show all the kind of background workings that are going on into this epic mammoth of a campaign. And so, if you are a part of the campaign, or if you don't want to know what's all going on in the background, you just want to be surprised as you go, you can pretty much just turn off this video now. Especially Ed. Alright, for the rest of you guys, this is going to be very interesting. We're going to go kind of, I mean, I'm not going to reveal everything about it right away. I'm just going to talk about the kind of now, you know, what's going on each session, what's going on in the background. And you're basically going to come to learn why this is the most lauded campaign in pretty much RPG history, which is quite a title. Okay, so to begin with, the campaign is called Masks of Nyarlathotep. And you can look it up all you want. But what is interesting is this year is actually the 30th anniversary of Masks of Nyarlathotep coming out. So it's kind of interesting that we're starting to play it this year. This is pretty much the premier campaign for Call of Cthulhu. As in, you know, when I was doing all my research about, you know, scenarios and things like that, masks kept on being brought up over and over and over. And so I was like, well, I gotta run it. I mean, this is what this is why you play Call of Cthulhu, is this scenario, this campaign, apparently. And so, you know, I've been reading through it, and I've read through most of it now, and yeah, it's epic. And, you know, this takes a year and a half or something like that, depending on how often you get together. And so it's definitely a hefty investment. And I have no idea if we'll make it to the end of it. I have no idea. If we do, it'd be, you know, it's something the people involved will never forget. You know, you'll never forget it. Even if we make it halfway, they'll never forget it. And so, for that reason, it seems really just interesting to me. Okay, so if you're not entirely familiar about who Nyarlathotep is, don't really worry about it. He is an outer god, or an other god. Outer god, I think, is the preferred term. And basically, Nyarlathotep would be the outer god that is most invested in humanity. He's most interested in us. Interested in fucking with us, basically. And so, for that reason, he's pretty much the perfect candidate for a campaign like this. Because he's got his hands everywhere, you know, and he's not going to be something that they can really defeat, you know. It's not like they're going to slay Nyarlathotep, but perhaps they can delay some horrible doom. And, yeah. So, I think that's pretty much all the kind of background I need to... Well, okay, so Jackson Elias. Jackson Elias was kind of this campaign it's very long, it's very epic, and Jackson Elias plays but a very small part in it. But he plays a very important part, as he is the reason that they get started, that they're thrown into this, and they have a reason to continue forward for the beginning parts. Is the mysterious, you know, slaughter of this man that they almost, you know, witnessed. And so, once they get deeper into the mystery, they realize how much bigger this is than just Jackson Elias, you know. He was just, you know, almost an inconsequential death in the grand scheme of things. And so, the fact that I picked one person to really know Jackson, and now after one session, that one person died. That puts a slight struggle on me. Not tremendously, though. Because if Ziggy changed characters as well, if it was a whole new group, then I'd be really screwed. I'd have to really put something together to kind of fix this. But I think Ziggy's character is going to, for one, he's going to still, like, he has no personal attachment to this guy, but he's curious, and that is very good in a Call of Cthulhu campaign. As long as your investigators continue to be curious, you can go places. They might not be the places you want to go, but you'll go places. And so, I don't think they're going to get a tremendous amount of gusto out of the death of Jackson anymore. And so, I have to kind of push them forward. I have to give them a little bit of a push. Of course, they're going to probably, well, we'll get to all the inner workings of the session and all that. But really the focus of the campaign for a while, for most of it really, is the Carlisle expedition, which they really glazed over. They did not pay much attention to it. This may be my fault. And I don't have my sheets on me, but the Carlisle expedition, okay, it's like a 24-year-old guy or something like that. He's a young guy. He's like a millionaire. He just spends most of his life just hanging out, partying, doing all that kind of stuff that playboys do, okay? And suddenly, he decides to launch this grand expedition to Kenya, to Africa. And it was very surprising to everybody. And he takes along some other people, some notable people, and they sail to London. They fly to Cairo, I believe. There's a flight, which was kind of a big deal. This is before, the transatlantic flight. They will not be taking many planes places, okay? They're going to be going boat if they want to really go anywhere. It's either train, car, or boat. Short-range flights, sure, but this is kind of, they could have looked up many newspaper articles about this. And they get to Nairobi. They get to Nairobi, and suddenly they go missing. Nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows where they went. They were in Nairobi. They went out, and they're gone. And so there's a big search party. And there's rumors that they may have been massacred by natives or tribals or something like that. And Erica Carlisle, Robert's sister, flies to Kenya to lead the search party. And she eventually discovers that they discover a massacre. Just blood and guts everywhere, all over a campsite. And they can't really identify any of the bodies. And they pin the massacre on some locals, some local cult members or something like that. They hang them, and Erica goes home, and everybody assumes, well, that was it. They were slaughtered by natives. Okay? And this was all over the news. And now, recently, Jackson Elias sends a wire to, in our case, Roy, and says that he has new information on the Carlisle expedition. And I think this was my problem, that I didn't instill kind of the value of this. I should have basically just said that if you uncovered the true, circumstances of the Lost Carlisle expedition, you would be world famous. I should have said that, because that's what they would be. It was kind of a big deal. And so I don't think I gave them that real impetus, And so they focused more on just this little cult murder when they should have been focusing on the bigger picture. And so I have to lead them back to the Carlisle expedition. And I will, no doubt about it. They can't just focus on Jackson for that long. So, I think we're going to go take it over to the whiteboard now, where I have kind of all my temporary plans for, next session and all that, all the info, and I'll kind of walk you through it on what happened, what happens in the background, and what's going to happen, kind of. So, yeah, let's take it over there. All right, I hope the audio is fine. My microphone's all in a weird position, but okay, you probably won't be able to read most of this, but we'll walk through it. All right, so yeah, massive Nyarlathotep in New York, and yes, they will be going to different places. I won't reveal where exactly, but numerous places around the world. All right, so starting with the New York Police Department, which is an important figure in this whole development. They haven't really factored into it. They never went to them for help. They're still more on the idea that, they need to be scared of the police department. As in, we commit crimes and the police department will come after us. Not, hey, the police department may be, working on this case. And they are working on the case. So they were present at Jackson's murder scene. They saw the symbol on the forehead. And if they had really talked to Lieutenant Poole, who's in charge of all this whole case, they would have found out that there have been like 8 other murders just like this recently. Kind of cult murders. And I really questioned on the Juju House. I questioned myself on if I wanted them to be able to link these murders to the Juju House. And I decided I'm only going to bring that up if they do, which they probably won't. But if one of them goes to the cops and says, I think there may be some cult stuff going on at the Juju House, they might be able to help raid the place or something. I have no problem with that. It's not like that's OP or something, If they get the cops to raid the Juju House, they should, they're not going to get much evidence out of it because the cops are going to take all of it, but they'll clean out the Juju House. Okay, so the other thing that happened in the murder scene was Roy was there and gave them his name and occupation. Okay? And so they have him listed as an important figure in the case. Like, they've got his picture up on the pinboard or whatever. And so they're, Lieutenant Poole's sifting through all the evidence and he's, working on this. And then he finally gets back to Roy. And so after a few days after the murder scene, he's going to try and contact Roy to question him. Not as a suspect or anything like that. Just see what he knows about Jackson and all that. And he's not going to get a hold of Roy. Interesting. And so he's going to go to the library, New York Public Library. He's going to go to his house, and he's going to find out, well, nobody's seen him in a little while, and he's not at home, and this is strange. And so he's going to talk to his coworkers at the library, and he's going to get some names. As I don't know if I mentioned this, but they had to decide how they all knew Roy, alright? I didn't come up with that shit, they did. And they were like, oh, well, we all go to the library a bunch, so, we've all seen him there, and, he contacted us. So, I'm going strictly off of that, man. That's what I do. So, I assume they hang out with Roy occasionally at the library. They were friendly to him. Who knows? And his coworkers noticed. They noticed that a baseball player talked to Roy a bunch, and there was a professor and a banker, stuff like that. So he got his names. Lieutenant Poole got his names. So Lieutenant Poole tracks down each one of these investigators. And so he goes to the Yankee player. Yankee player doesn't say nothing. And he's got a good alibi. He's a famous, player for the Yankees. He's not escapading around or doing any shit and whatever, Sure, he knows Roy, but he hasn't seen him, blah, blah, blah. They go check on the dentist. Dentist is not at work. Dentist is not at home. Where's the dentist? What's going on? Where's the dentist? We'll find out. The banker. Okay. So the banker, played by Ren, he was doing some weird stuff. Like, first he messaged me when he made the character, asking if he could have like a scalpel and a hacksaw or something like that. And I'm like, sure, I guess. And then he did some weird things, like he brought some girls over and he like cut off pieces of their hair without them knowing. Just some strange stuff. And then after he decided to change characters, he tells me that, oh, he was building like a murder room in his house. And he was like a serial killer. And I'm like, oh, let me write that down. And so, yeah, the cops are going to kind of bust him at an inopportune moment. And so it's going to be in the papers if the professor looks, or more likely Lieutenant Poole will tell him that, yeah, he was caught as a serial killer. Great. And so that finally leaves Professor Anthony Skinner. And so Lieutenant Poole is going to pay a visit to Anthony Skinner. He's going to pay a visit to him last after he went to all these others. And he's going to ask him, you know, have you seen Roy? We know that you know, occasionally speak with him. And, you know, we'll see what the professor says. He'll try to probably lie. I don't think he's going to give up the jig. Because, like I said, they're still very wary of the cops. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to do any of that. And I understand that's going to kind of hold up your characters. And so he'll probably brush that off. And Lieutenant Poole will tell him that he's spoken with these others. The baseball player said nothing. The banker got caught as a serial killer. Did you know anything about that? Oh, no. And then he'll tell him that the dentist is missing. And this is going to spook the professor. Why is this going to spook the professor? Well, we'll get to that in a second. All right, we'll get to that in a second. But it will spook the professor. It's going to make him a little bit wary. Okay? So, okay. That's what's going on with the NYPD. All right, so that you know, they have some information, but they're not going to act on their own because that's not what Call of Cthulhu is about. If the investigators go to the police, then I'm going to have them act realistically. But they're not really going to do anything in the background. All right, so then let me switch over. We're going to talk about the cult of the Bloody Tongue. The cult of the Bloody Tongue is one sect of the cults of Nyarlathotep. And they, you know, each cult, there's hundreds of them across the world. And they all worship like a specific avatar, a specific mask of Nyarlathotep. And so the avatar that this cult worships is one of like a gigantic beast that just has a big red tongue for a face and stuff like that. And it's horrible. And so, you know, they'll know that it's Nyarlathotep. You know, the leader of this cult over here will know that it's Nyarlathotep. The underlings, they might not know the name. They'll just know the bloody tongue. It's hard to say. All right, so what's happening with them? Silas Naquani died. They killed him. They, you know, the trapdoor incident, all that crazy fun stuff. And so, at some point, the next day, cultists are going to go over there and see what's going on. And they're going to find Silas's body exploded. They're going to find two other dead cultists, and they're going to find the body of a strange white man. And they're also going to find the door to the inner sanctum open. What happened? What happened here? Well, you know, it must have been more than just this white guy, you know. So what's going on? They're going to search. Now here's something very interesting. Initially, I was thinking about all the stuff that the cult is going to do to these investigators, you know, because they're onto them. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, how do they know who the investigators are? Where did they get that information? And so I was like, I may have to change all my plans. They don't know who the investigators are. And so I was going to have, you know, the leader of the cult send nightmares to the professor. And, you know, they were going to start, like, breaking in, and, you know, they kidnapped the dentist and stuff like that. And, you know, all sorts of terrible stuff. But I was like, they never gave their names. And, you know, just seeing somebody, you know, they saw, like, at the funeral at Jackson's hotel room, they saw their faces. But, you know, you can't do much with that in 1920. So And then, boom! I was like, oh, you messed up. I got you. I got you. And I actually messaged Ziggy, because I had to make sure. And I was just like, as a completely just random, irrelevant question that doesn't mean anything, did you guys happen to take, like, any, ID or anything off of Roy's corpse? And he was like, well, I never went down there, but no, I don't think so. And I was like, oh, it's like I almost didn't ask you, but okay, thanks. I was like, yes, I got you. So they're going to find the ID on Roy's body. They're going to find his ID, his name, his picture, all that good stuff. And they have some cultists that are in the police department. Because, like I said, the cults are everywhere. Nyarlathotep cults everywhere. And they're eventually going to learn this fact, and it's going to terrify them. Because they have no idea who is a cultist and who is not a cultist. But I know. That's part of the beauty of the campaign. Okay, so they have cultists that are in the police department, and so they're just going to start looking. They're going to look around the police files or anything like that for Roy's name. And, oh, they're going to find an open investigation file that has all their names and occupations and, home addresses. How convenient for them. Okay, so they are going to close the Juju house. Because Silas pretty much ran the entire operation, at least, for the front. And so they could replace him, but they are worried that, there may be some prying eyes or something like that. So to be safe for now, they're going to close the Juju house, the front part, but they are going to continue to have rituals downstairs. And if they had talked to the neighbors, like I said, I described it, there were tenants all around this courtyard in front of the Juju house. They could have gone and talked to them. And they would have found out that every month or whatever, every couple weeks, a large number of people go into the Juju house and they don't come out for the rest of the night. And, I wonder what's going on. Because clearly the front of the Juju house, or, inside, it can't hold all those people. There must be a basement. And, whatever. So they're going to continue to have their rituals. I thought about relocating, but I figured I'm not going to complicate it too much, and I figured they got a nice setup down there. They would have to do a lot to relocate, and they will if the whole place gets raided and the leader survives. He will relocate, but for now they're going to continue out of there. Okay, so they're going to look at these investigators. They're going to look at the list. They're going to see a high-profile Yankee player. They see in the investigation file he pretty much said nothing, and he seems like he's just severing all ties, so it'd probably be too risky to take care of him, so just whatever. We're not going to worry about it. They see the banker was caught as a serial killer, and I'm sure somebody in the cult just laughed about that. Like, okay, brilliant. So then we have the dentist and the professor. The dentist is kind of just sitting, drinking himself to death. They like go and they like check on him. They just find him doing a lot of drinking. He's not going into work. He's just like a wreck. So he's probably not going to continue, poking into this case. But the professor could be dangerous. He's smart and he's curious. They don't like that. So instead of just killing the professor, Makwanga, I believe that's his name, is Makwanga, who's the leader in New York. He's got a better plan. They're going to kidnap the dentist, and they're going to kind of use him to mentally break the professor. And so they kidnap the dentist, and they feed him to the Chakota. And this is a creature, you remember when I described the ceremonial room in the basement? And there was like a huge stone slab that was just like completely form-fit into the ground. Yeah. Under that slab is the Chakota, which is a horrible creature. If they see this thing, it's like, and they fail their sanity check, it's like a 1d20 loss. It's pretty terrible. It's like a big... You know what it's kind of like? Is in Dark Souls, when you're going towards Nito, and there's those big, like, towering things that have just a bunch of bones and faces, and they're just kind of like this. I hope you know what I'm talking about. That's what they're like. They're a little bit bigger than that, I think. But they're basically just a tower of, like, flesh and bones. And they have all these faces of the people that it's eaten. And so when it eats somebody, its face gets stuck on it. And then it also bites people and eats them. So that's the Chakota. So they're going to feed the dentist to the Chakota. So the dentist will be a part of it. And they're going to send... Makonga is going to send a nightmare of the event to Skinner while he's sleeping. And so when we open the next session, I will start with the nightmare of him. The companion PDF that I have, which is twice as long as the actual book, it lists a big chapter on dreams in the campaign and how they can be, useful to provide information, or they can just be, to provide terror and stuff like that. And so one of them lists a nightmare, which is in the base of the Juju house, and it's the reader as themselves, like, becoming a Chakota. And so they see, like, sacrifices in front of them, and they see their, like, mouths getting bigger and bigger until they devour the people. And so that's going to happen to Professor Skinner. He's going to have that nightmare, but one of the sacrifices is going to be the dentist. And that's going to be a bigger sanity loss because he's basically eating this guy that he just knew. It's fucked up, I know. And so they're basically going to try to wear down Skinner enough that he just either commits suicide or he abandons all hope of going after the cult. Okay. They also know about Lieutenant Poole, and they know that he is in charge of the whole investigation. I'm not planning on them just offhandedly just killing him. I'm not planning on it. If they do go to the cops and they involve the lieutenant quite a bit, and he's like a part of this, then they probably will kill him, just to make an example to the others. Because, they don't know about these other 5 people that are coming into the case. They don't know about that, so they probably will know pretty quickly, because they're going to have eyes on Skinner the whole time. Like, there's going to be spot hidden checks all over the place to see, like, when he's glancing over his shoulder. And, it's going to make him real paranoid. Because if he fails, I'm just like, oh yeah, you look over your shoulder, you thought you saw something, but it was nothing. But if he succeeds, you see like the glimpse of somebody's cloak or something behind you as they duck into an alley or something like that. You got to make him real paranoid. That's the whole point. Okay, so yeah, they're not going to kill Lieutenant Poole right away, but they might. All right, and then the final person in this mix is Jonah Kensington. And he is the editor and the owner, I guess, of Prospero House, which is a local small publishing company that they kind of publish small, kind of occult books, I guess, not bestsellers at all, which is really strange. And Jonah Kensington is also, they handle all of Jackson Elias's books. And so he's a real good friend. He was a real good friend of Jackson. And so they completely overlooked him, and they won't in the future. I'm gonna put him in their spotlight a little bit because he is an important character in this whole mix. And so he doesn't really know what's going on. All he knows is Jackson died. He pretty much assumes it's a cult murder because he knows Jackson was involved in all that. And he thought that the cults were after him or something like that. Other than that, he doesn't really know much. He met Roy and Skinner at the funeral. And so he's going to try calling Roy, of course, but he's not going to get a hold of him. And so then, secondly, he's going to get a hold of Skinner, Professor Skinner. And he's going to tell him that he has a letter that he received from Jackson a little while ago, a few weeks ago or months ago, I guess. And he believes that it may be of some help to Professor Skinner. Because, Professor Skinner and Roy, they seemed like they were investigating, trying to get to the bottom of this. And so Jonah is very interested in anyone that is going to make like an interest in finding out who killed basically his best friend. And so he's going to call up Skinner and tell him he's got this letter. And the letter basically is going to reinforce the Carlisle angle. That's where I'm really going to push the Carlisle angle. That was, Jonah is going to Jonah is my way of telling Professor Skinner that this is big shit. He's going to say like, if Jackson, uncovered something about the Carlisle expedition, it would have made him world famous. Something big like that. And he's also going to push the London angle, because my current feel is that they're leaning towards going to Kenya. And they will go to Kenya eventually, but I'd rather have them go to London first. Kenya is a bit more of a... They need more information than that. And so he's gonna suggest London as that's where Jackson came from last. And he knows some people in London that could help them out, get them some more information about what Jackson was really looking into. What did he find out? He's not really I'm gonna have him not really push the Kenya angle yet, because that's where the expedition went lost, and undoubtedly something big is there, but information, knowledge is power. So yeah, he's gonna push the London angle. Okay, so yeah, the sequence of events for the next section, or next session, is Skinner is going to receive the Chakotay nightmare. Then he'll get the visit from the police, and then he's going to contact outside help. I'm just going to say you feel like you need to contact somebody, as you found out, the dentist is missing, Roy's dead, the banker's a serial killer, the baseball player wants nothing to do with it. You got to contact. So I'm just going to tell him that, because we have to get these people involved. Then he's going to receive the phone call from Kensington to tell him, why don't you come meet me at Prospero House when you get a moment, And that night, that first night, that is when the other group will have the Deadlight event that we did that other session. And then the next day, they'll arrive in New York. And so then we'll see where they go from there. They're going to go back to the Juju house at some point. I feel like it's kind of inevitable. As that's the center point. It is the climax of New York is the Juju house. But I'm hoping I can push Skinner, Ziggy, to look into the Carlisle angle, because Erica Carlisle lives in New York. And so they're supposed to go to her and get all the manuscripts and shit that Jonah or Robert had. And she also has some books that could be of use, and she also has a lot of information. And I want them to kind of do all the research, find out everybody that was on the expedition, the notable people, and look into their lives, because the doctor on the expedition, Huston, he has some files, because he was Robert Carlyle's psychiatrist, and so he has files on his mental state of being, and they're pretty damn useful. And so I'm hoping they really can look into this. If not, if they just deal with the action part at the Juju house and clear that place out or whatever, die trying, and then they're just like, well, let's go to London. We can work with that. I can work with whatever they do, but I'm hoping they get more into the knowledge is power mode. We'll see. It's a pretty ragtag group. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So now you're all caught up basically. on where we stand, what's going on in the background. They didn't really handle the hotel room perfectly. They ran away, which is interesting. If they had, they would have basically just scared them off, the cultists at the hotel room, and they would have gotten plenty more clues if they had. They would have gotten clues that would have led them to Shanghai, would have led them to Cairo, would have led them to an author in New York that they could have talked to, you know, stuff like that. And so I basically gave them the kind of really important ones for New York. I didn't want to lead them too far astray yet. And so I gave them the one that led to Emerson Imports, which is, they had that got them to the Juju House. And then I also gave them the business card for Edward Gavigan in London at the Penhew Foundation. And so they immediately assumed the Penhew Foundation was evil. And they're not wrong, but it was a very quick assumption. And, that's basically just to get them to London, and then they have a solid lead in London to go off of. That's what that is. So yeah, I think that's going to be pretty much it for now. I'm very excited. There's so much content for them to go through, and so many opportunities for mayhem and mischief and mystery and challenges, and oh man, yeah. So yeah, I mean, based on their new group, they're a much more solid group. They have a much better chance. I'm just worried that they had this ordeal with the zombies. And so now they're going just action route. And they're just loading up on guns, which they kind of did. And they're just going to run down there, kick the door in, and just, and it's not really going to work. Could they take out the zombies if they went like that? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think... every shot that they did would do 1 damage. You assume 4 zombies, they each have around 13, 14 health. It's a lot of shots. The baseball bat strategy is more appropriate. But they won't assume that, because it's zombies. But they're not Walking Dead zombies. This is Call of Cthulhu zombies. Everything can freaking rip you apart. And if they try to do that, I will punish them. Because that's my job. So, Mkwanga will be there. If I sense that they're kicking in doors and rushing down there to shoot everything, Mkwanga will be there. And who knows, they may even be in the middle of a little ritual. And the Chakotay might be there. I don't know. Mkwanga is also, he's a powerful sorcerer. So, yeah, they would have to shoot him pretty quickly. Okay, so yeah, I'm very excited for it, and this is kind of why I'm pushing for us to do Call of Cthulhu more often than not, because I don't think the first session grabbed them as completely as it could have. And so I think once they really get into the meat of this, they're going to be hooked. Once they're steeped in paranoia and intrigue and mystery, they don't know who to trust, but they want to keep going. That's when things get real. Alright, so I'm going to end off this little video here. I don't know. So this is going to probably be a weekly series then. Probably about a day after the roll manging. We'll do this secrets thing. I hope you enjoyed it. This insight into this crazy campaign. And obviously I did not reveal that much about the breadth of it. But yeah, it's going to get even crazier, so stay tuned.